Welcome, Chrissy, to this episode.
Hi, Janine. How are you?
I'm good. Now, today we actually want to talk about an article that was in The Age, and it was called Gone in
hmm
52 Seconds Inside Australia's Telehealth Injectables Gold Rush. So, we want to address this
Very dramatic.
article. Yes.
Very
Look,
dramatic.
we know the media likes to bag anything, really. They like to find the dirt in anything they can. And anyway,
Correct.
they have printed this article, and we just want to debunk some of the things that they've said, because obviously these are just people that they're just reporters. They really don't have insight into the industry. And I must say, there's one disappointing thing in this article is they didn't interview a nurse. They just interviewed doctors and the guys from fresh clinics. And
Hmm.
we are a huge part of this industry, and I think, why don't they talk to some of the nurses out there that have been nursing for years and years and are in this industry and have been in this industry for a long time? Because our voice is important as well. And I think we are getting overlooked a lot. We're just getting slandered and not really given the respect we deserve.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting topic to talk about, definitely, for sure.
Mm,
And there are pros and cons, I guess, to both sides. So I guess what
absolutely.
we're going to try and do today is broach most of those, or all of, if we can, those statements, and see if we can try and give a more 50-50 sort of type
Well, just
look at the debate.
and our perspective as well.
Mm,
So, one of the things that they start off with the
mm,
article is they talk about their consultation. They had a consultation with a nurse. That nurse then handed over to the doctor. The doctor spent, they said, 53 seconds doing a consult, approving the script. But what they really don't explain here is that the nurse has already done a thorough consultation. The nurse has documented their medical history, even done a quick mental health assessment, because that's part of our questions as well, and put in also what the recommended dosages are for the areas, what they plan to do, the whole thing. So the doctor's come on and he's reading all of that as he's doing this quick
mm.
consult. Now, we need to say this consult was just for an anti-wrinkle injection. These injections are really low risk, so it didn't warrant him to go into great detail about the complications, aftercare, or anything like that, because it is a low risk procedure. So I actually looked at this and thought, you know what? The whole process, I think, was done professionally and appropriately for what the treatment was. 53 seconds, yeah, it's short, it's quick and short, but let's debunk that a little bit. If we were in a hospital setting and we were bringing a doctor for a script for a patient, would give the doctor the handover, we would probably give a huge handover to the doctor, what the patient's allergies were, the patient's details, why we thought the patient needed a medication. Now, the doctor would give us a verbal script over the phone, and we would get a second nurse who would come and listen to that verbal script. And that's how we would get, scripts basically. So what is the difference? Please, Chrissy, do you agree with me?
Yeah, look, there is no difference. And in a hospital setting, the doctors, a lot of the time are seeing multiple patients in a ward, or, in a day, if you're in a post-surgical ward, they're coming in and they're seeing people that have just sort of woken up, they're going through, they're giving the medications, the nurses are doing the scripts, they're getting people out. So it is quite a fast-paced process as well at times. So there's no difference between a registered nurse in a hospital setting who has the exact same education as the registered
Yes.
nurse in a clinical setting, which is in the clinic. Everyone's on the same page here. We know how to read scripts. We know how to consult. We know what we're looking for. We know how to assess risk. So when they're stating things like, the doctor only did the script or the consult for 53 seconds, they're actually taking away the educational part and the value of the registered nurse that's actually
Mm.
spent potentially 10 minutes consulting her patient or his patient about potential risk, aftercare, allergies, medications that you're on, Do you have a history of disease? If you do, let's talk about it. Have you had any problems with anti-wrinkle before, dermal filler, etc., etc.? So all
Mm.
of these concerns that they're making out haven't been addressed have been addressed. So
Yeah.
when we speak to the doctor via video link, we actually do a handover again and we say, you know, this is Sally. She has nil history of any issues with anti-wrinkle. Her allergies are X, Y, and Z. Her medications that she takes are X, Y, and Z. Her disease is X, Y, and Z or nil. And we make an assessment to the doctor. She's ready to go. I hand it over
Yeah.
to you. The doctor then does a second consult. So I kind of think it's actually quite thorough because you're getting two
Mm-hmm.
consultations, you're getting two medical professionals saying, you know, this is an okay to go with this S4 medication. And I think that then by, you know, talking about the timing sounds quick and it sounds really bad and it sounds like how could you get all of that done in that time, but you have to remember you're dealing with two professionals. So you've got a registered nurse who is a medical professional and you've got a doctor who's a medical professional. Both talk to each other on a continual basis. They know how to communicate precisely and they know how to get to the points that need to be done in that 53 seconds, sorry. So it may sound to someone on the street like, gosh, that's quick. That seems like a rush. But if you're in this industry, it's actually not. That's a very
No.
normal consult that you could have with a doctor for a script.
Now, if I'm seeing a patient for the first time, my initial consultation goes for 40 minutes because that allows time to talk about everything. And that's very thorough. So, what the doctor is getting is a succinct, breakdown of everything I've talked about with the patient. So, but what he sees from the other end is most prescribing platforms has is they can go on the back end, they see everything. So when we call them, they see everything um, that we've documented. So we don't have
They've also
to,
got pictures. They've also got the
yes,
pictures that we've taken. They have all of that in front of them.
they
So
do.
they're very well versed. It's not like,
Yes.
hi, bye. It's definitely not like that at all. And I think
Mm.
it would have been a lot more informative for the public if those things were actually spoken about so that people could realize, you know, it's not just a quick, hey, how you going? Is this person okay to go? That's actually not what it is at all. There's a lot of moving parts in that consult.
There was a statement in the article that said that there was 0.1% of complications in the industry. And there was a response from a doctor that said that's not good enough. And let me tell you, 0.1% is nothing. Now, in regards to complications, when we talk about complications, they're very low and very high complications in a wide range of treatments that we do, from as simple as a bruise to a little bit of swelling to a little bit of bleeding up to some serious complications. Now, 0.1% is actually, I think, reasonable because, I mean, look, a little bit of bruising, a little bit of swelling, yeah, that happens. And then the majority of the time, that's what we're seeing in clients is, we're putting a needle in. Of course, you're going to see a little bit of bruising occasionally. So to really say it's not good enough, I just think that's unacceptable.
So my question to him then is, well, what are you wanting? What does he want? What does he
It's not going to be
expect? Does he
zero.
expect when we're so what does he expect when we're injecting someone that they're not going to get swelling, that they're not going to get bruising? And if that's the case, I'm very happy for him to advise me on how we can do that going forward for every single patient
Hmm.
because it's impossible.
It is impossible. And then there was another statement that said that they're not getting reported. Now, if every
Well, I
pharmaceutical
don't
company that
report to the doctor when someone
has a
has a
bruise,
bruise. No,
if
no,
someone had a
it's a waste of that doctor's time.
absolutely. And it makes us look incompetent because we should be able to manage that. Like in a hospital system, we
Yeah.
manage most of the issues and complications that happen on the ward or in wherever we're based in a hospital.
Yeah.
And the doctors rely on us to manage those things. And if we called them in for any little thing that went wrong, they would think we were incompetent because we are registered to perform and to address and to manage certain situations on our own. Now, we don't have to get the doctors to hold our hand to manage a bruise, for goodness sake. That's
No.
ridiculous. But with every injection, with every medication, there are risks. So they are measured. So if in any industry there is a risk when you do anything, whether that risk is low or whether that risk is high. So a lot of what we do, the risk is pretty low. With anti-wrinkle injections, the risk is low. But when we look at
Mm.
dermal filler treatments, there are some risks with dermal filler that are quite high. So in that case, there are things put in place that as nurses we have implemented in our clinics, and doctors as well, but nurses specifically, because when we join up to these prescribing businesses, they make sure that we are compliant with some of these procedures. So first of all, one of the things is that we've all done a managing vascular occlusion complications online course. Basically, it's an online course. There's plenty of them out there, but that's one thing. They want to make sure that we've ticked that and we've done that course. The other one is to make sure that we have emergency medications on site. So we take photos of those, we make sure they're in date, and they are on site in case we have an emergency. The other thing is education. As nurses, we have to do 20 hours minimum of training in our specialty area per year. Now, APRA does random auditing of that. So sometimes a nurse may have to submit that documentation to APRA. Now, can I say, the aesthetic or cosmetic industry really supports nurses and doctors with education. There are heaps of conferences, there are webinars, there are educational portals that we can go into and learn about anatomy and products. The pharmaceutical companies have platforms set up that we can go in and learn as well. There is so much available to us to enrich us, to grow us, to teach us, and really we can invest in ourselves a lot in this industry. As a nurse, I've been a nurse for 30 years, actually a little bit over 30 years. And my background is theatre nursing. And can I tell you, this industry, the aesthetics industry, has far more education than I ever received as a theatre nurse. And that's one way that we reduce the risk of complications happening, but also reducing any permanent damage from complications, because we learn how to manage them, we learn how to understand them and manage them appropriately. Now, one thing I actually believe we should be doing as aesthetic nurses is doing a vascular occlusion management course annually, as we do with our basic life support in a hospital. And, there's some great courses out there. One, which is fairly new, is called the Anti-Aging Answers, and they've got a great course on managing dermal filler complications. And I think you've done it as well, haven't you?
I've done it. Yeah, it's fabulous. And I found it very, very helpful. I find all types of courses, any education, really helpful and useful. There's always something that you can pick up that, even though you might be quite thorough or know most things, there's always something new that you can pick up that maybe didn't sort of really stick the first time or the second time or the third time around. So I think it's a really good idea. And I think managing vascular occlusions, because, even though we say they can happen, my experience and all the nurses in the cosmetic nurses I know, it's not something that happens all the time. It's very rare.
No, it is.
And so in saying that, you forget those sort of big ticket items in those courses. So then when you can go back and redo that course as a refresher, it just stays in the forefront of your head, and you're ready to go in case of anything happening. Because really, I mean, as a nurse, that's what we've got to be all the time, just prepared, always prepared.
Yeah, and there's, nurses, we have done quite a bit of training. Most of us have done a minimum of 3 to 4 years of training. Then we do a postgrad, and then we, to get into this industry, I know in the article they did mention a 2-day refresh and saying that wasn't long enough. Now, that 2-day course is just to learn to do anti-wrinkle injections. Now, in our nursing, we learn how to inject, we learn about drugs over the course of our course. So a 2-day course to learn about anti-wrinkle injections, I think that's feasible. Probably, what some people may need is more practical experience. Over 2 days might not be enough. But most
Of course
nurses
not.
who are competent, that's plenty to actually feel that they could do those injections. Now, whether they could open up a business or not after a 2-day course, I don't know about that. But
I
for
think that's
myself,
debatable.
Yeah, so that's where I think there might be a little bit of nurses doing these courses and then starting a business.
But those two things are not necessarily intertwined. So,
No.
even if you did do a 2-day course, just say for example, no, there's nowhere in that course that it says, okay, so now you're ready to open up your own business and go out on your own. No, it just says you're actually competent in doing 25 hours of, et cetera, theory for this, and potentially maybe a couple of hours or however long it was, hands-on experience. And I think this is where the lines get blurred and people are not taking responsibility as an adult for their position in this. Now, if you've just come out of a course, whether or not you feel you're competent or not, you need to make responsible choices in what your next steps are in your career. So any sort of industry, really, especially when it's something as serious as a medical industry, you would think, or you would hope, that you would want to get a little bit of hands-on experience under the care of somebody else, just to give you that little extra pep so that you go out into the big bad world totally prepared.
Mm.
I'm a very textbook. I go by the protocols. I don't skip a beat on anything like that. So for me, it was very important to be working under someone first, gaining as much experience as I can underneath somebody else, and then using that experience in the way that I learnt the best to then go ahead and, treat my clients the way that I felt was the best after what I've
Mm.
learned. I
Mm.
don't think necessarily that that's possible to do when you're a freshie out. I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm not saying that there are exceptions to the rule, because there's always going to be. And good for you if that's that. I'm just saying, if we're looking at this as a whole and we're going from people that are maybe age 20, to in their 50s starting out, fresh, I think it might be wise just to use an adult out view and outlook on what your next steps are going to be. There's no rush. You don't need to go up and open your own clinic within a month. You can very happily learn as much as you need to learn to become competent. So then that when you are going out into the big bad world, you're really ready and you're armed with as much education, as much hands-on work and experience that you can get. And then, hopefully you won't be in situations that you can't manage. So I
Mm.
think that in this industry, there is always going to be someone that can do it, and it's, fabulous. But for the most people, it's probably a really good idea just to take your time, earn your stripes, as we sort of say, and sort of move into that sort of domain in a slow but steady pace.
Mm.
We can't speak for everyone, but for me, when I'm looking at it, I think that's probably, a really wise thing to do.
But there are quite a few prescribing agencies out there that nurses can join. Now, when they do sign up, they actually have to either show their expertise and years of experience. And if they don't, they actually go and have competency testing and further training to
Fabulous.
get passed by these prescribing businesses. So it's not as if you're just signing up and they're going, okay, we're going to start, you
Yeah.
can start ordering
Yeah.
medications. No, no, no.
Yeah.
They're quite stringent in their processes for you to become a member,
Yeah.
So it's not a willy-nilly thing, or you've done your course, you can sign up. No, no, no. They want to make sure that you're competent and that you've done the appropriate training and that you're clinically safe to go out and run your own business. So they check all of that stuff. They check compliance. They check that your room is good to go, that you've got the proper fridges and room set up for you to run your own business. So they do take on a big responsibility to make sure that's done. And I think people don't realize that. I'm from Victoria, you're from New South Wales. And in Victoria, we have to have a drugs and poisons license, which is another thing that we have to apply for. So those people actually came to my clinic when I applied and did a clinic visit to make sure that what I said on my form was correct, that I had the right room layout. I had everything set up like I said I did. And those things are like, locked fridges, the temperature monitoring for my fridge, locked cupboards to keep my schedule for medications in. They made sure I had all my emergency medications.
Safe from all the squirrels that are going to
Yeah,
jump in
that's
there
it.
and
So,
eat
so
them.
all that stuff, that I had the right documentation, they checked everything. Now, not all states have that. But in saying that, every single prescribing business does it anyway. They do that. We have to send photos and things like that. So they check all those things. So I don't think people really realize that, but they do check all that.
Of course. I mean, you're dealing with medications. So, of course, they're
Mm.
going to. And I think to suggest in articles otherwise is just misleading. And
Yeah, I
there's
don't
really no
think it
need
was.
for it.
I don't think that was addressed in the article, but I don't think they realize that those steps are taken by the prescribing businesses. They check all these details with the nurses. The other
Mm.
thing they're talking about is having doctors on site. Now, I
I
do
mean,
disagree
look,
with that.
I don't necessarily think that that's a must. I think if you have access to a doctor, which we do, which is via video link, I think that that's enough because, to be honest, as long as you have your protocols in place of how to manage any issue, it doesn't matter if there's someone standing beside you or if they're on the phone, you're still able to ask them the steps that they believe to be in your best interest, and
Mm.
you've still got that support. So I don't necessarily think that the doctor has to be on site as long as the doctor is available, because I have heard that some nurses say that their prescribers aren't available. Now, that is another story. The prescribers that I use are very available. They're always available, and they give you multiple choices of people to call. So I haven't experienced that.
Neither have
And I
I.
think it's important, that if you can't get in touch with your prescriber, that maybe you think about changing prescribers, because I mean, again, as an adult, you have to make choices in what you're doing in your business or where your place of work. And for me, I just wouldn't feel safe with not being able to get in contact with my prescriber.
Mm.
If that's an issue, then it's really easily fixed. You just change prescribers, don't you?
The
Like,
the other issue here is
I
is
mean,
that,
I
you
don't.
know, does a doctor on site make it safer? I'm
Well,
going to
what are
share
they
from
going to
my own.
do? What are they
I'm going
going
to
to do
share
that we can't do?
in a hospital. Is there always a doctor on site? No, there's not. Guess what?
No.
I'm a theatre nurse. I used to work in recovery. There's not a doctor on
Mm.
site. They leave once the last patient wakes up and they go and we
Well,
manage
they're
it.
still in the theatre. Well, they're still
Or
in the
we
theatre.
or we call them if we need something and they give us an order over the phone. I just think they're not seeing the bigger picture here. We are used to working autonomously and independently. The other thing
Yeah.
is too is that why is it that the doctor knows more than the nurse? Can I tell you, I've been in situations in a cosmetic clinic where there has been a serious complication and I've been in the room with the doctor and the doctor didn't know what to do. They've caused the complication and they've not known what to do. They've looked to me and myself and another nurse has saved the day. So, I have to say, in every business, there's the good, the bad, and the ugly. There's in
Hmm.
every industry, whether it's nursing, whether it's you're a doctor, whether you're a plumber or an electrician, guess what? There's great people in the industry. There are those that are not so great, and there's the people that are incompetent in every single industry. So we shouldn't, look, we're not bagging doctors, no. No, no way. We are not doing that. But let's just remember that doctors do have specialties, like nurses have specialties. We don't know everything. And in this
No, we
situation,
work together.
yes,
We
I
work
was
together,
in,
Janine. That's what it is. We're not, the segregation is not what any of us are interested in.
no, a team.
Ultimately, we want to work together. That's why we have our prescribers that are either nurse practitioners or doctors. Now, working together is what makes the industry good.
Yes.
Keeps everyone cohesive. And I don't feel that there should be anybody trying to pivot a doctor against a nurse or a nurse against a
No,
doctor.
let's
That
work
no one's better
together.
than the other. Everyone's doing
Yes.
their part in their role to get to the end result. And we appreciate their experience, their expertise, and their knowledge. And they also appreciate ours, whether it's in
Yes.
a cosmetic clinic or in a hospital setting. So, this notion that a doctor's saying this and a nurse can't do that, well, that's really unfortunate. But I know in all of the instances that I've been working with doctors outside of a hospital in clinic, the doctors are fabulous. They're amazing. They're very, very good at what they do, and they rely on me or the other nurse that's there for what I do best, and they come in and they do what they do best, and
Yeah.
it works magically.
And I've
Magic.
worked in clinics where, the doctors really have valued, my knowledge. I mean, I have been a theatre nurse for a long time and I've been in management, I've been a director of nursing, I've done
Yeah.
education, and then I've come into this industry. So I've got a vast expanse of experience that they have appreciated, which is great. But to say that a doctor has to be in the clinic, I mean, what? So,
I mean,
I
no,
don't
just
think
as
it's
long as he's
appropriate.
accessible. No, as
I
long
just
as
I
he's
don't think it's
accessible.
necessary, because then you have to do it across the board, that a doctor can never leave
Right.
a hospital. They have to be there all the time. I just think it devalues the amount of training and education that we as nurses do to keep our skills up. Now, like I said, there's the good and bad and the ugly in every industry. So, let's just not focus on this industry and
Yeah.
highlight the very few and unfortunate who have had some serious complications with their patients, which, I don't know a huge amount about some of these circumstances that have happened, but it happens in every industry, every single industry. And that is why when we do our consultations, we have a thorough consultations with our clients and let them know that complications can occur. Can occur.
Mm.
Like I said, I think it's really important that as nurses, we make sure that we understand how to manage complications and have everything in our clinic ready to go just in case that happens to us.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, you're right. There's always going to be a cowboy or a rogue doctor or nurse somewhere,
Yep,
and it's just part of life. But usually everyone's across who they are and everyone sort of figures that out, and it doesn't really last that long. But, I think overall, and I have to say, I have so many close girlfriends that are cosmetic nurses. We all give each other so much support. We're always
absolutely.
there for each other. Everyone
Yes.
backs everyone. And the
Yep.
ones that don't, well, then you choose to probably not have them in your social
Yeah,
circle. But in
absolutely.
my experience, everyone is so lovely and helpful and kind. And I think it's a great industry. And I think if we were more focused on the good that comes out of the industry, other than these articles picking on things and trying to make things look like, they're untoward or they're not done properly, and give the public, or the gen pop, as sort of we call it,
Yeah,
you know, these false narratives in their head that make them concerned and scared. When, you're in a really safe environment with a registered nurse when you're getting your injectables. If your nurse is competent and she's compliant, you're in a very safe space. Very
absolutely.
safe space.
Now, there's
Yeah.
one thing else I just want to address here, because in the title it said Inside Australia's Telehealth Injectables Gold Rush. Most, oh no,
Gold
it's
rush.
hilarious. Now, I don't know what all the prescribing businesses are charging, but I know most of them charge around about $25 a script, and they're saying, oh, for 53 seconds, that's, a lot. But let me put that in perspective for you. If I had a serious complication, I'd ring the doctor. The doctor is responsible as well as I'm responsible for that patient. So you know
Hmm.
what? It's worth it. I actually think it's cheap for a script because they're taking on the responsibility of that patient. And I think people need to understand the gravity of
Hmm.
that. And, I know that some of these guys at Fresh have had to really manage some serious complications. Now, I think they deserve probably more than $25 for the responsibility they take on when
Yeah.
prescribing. And I don't think the
No,
general public
if you're a
understands
doctor
that.
and if you've done 10 years, I mean, $25, please. Of course you
Yeah,
deserve it.
absolutely they deserve it. And I don't think it's a gold rush. I just think, value their experience, value what they're taking on. I value it. I'm very
So do I.
grateful. Absolutely.
I think, we can't do this without them. We need
Mhm.
them by our side. And as I said before, we work very well together. And I think this whole notion, 53 seconds, like, okay, fine. But a lot can be done in 53 seconds if you think
I
about it.
know.
You know?
Yes. Even if you look at our introduction and how long if you think 1 minute of our intro, we've talked about a lot in one
Mm,
minute, especially if you're
right?
really, succinct in what you're
53
saying.
seconds is not anything to be laughed at or sniffed at. Like
No, no.
it's actually not that quick. And as we sort of touched on it before, you're getting a double consultation. So it's not 53 seconds
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
all. That's not the consult. That's just the doctor going, I completely stand by your, understanding of the patient, and we're good to go. That's what that is.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, there we have. We've
Mm.
debunked that article a little bit. I'm sure there's more
That's
we can
annoying,
talk
that
about.
article.
It's a really shame that our industry is being slaughtered because of the few that have done the wrong thing, when there was hundreds and hundreds of us that aren't like that. well, actually, it's probably thousands of us across Australia, but it's the few, obviously, that have caused some issues, even non-medical people, who are out there practicing.
I mean, that's just outrageous. I mean, who in their
Crazy.
right mind would start injecting people when you're not insured or when you're not educated to do so? I mean, it's
Let
crazy.
me
It's
add
really
on
crazy.
that we actually have to have our own indemnity insurance, which is actually very costly, and our prescribing
Yeah.
businesses, they annually we have to submit that every year that we've got that certificate of
Mm,
insurance. So
yeah.
that's another thing that we do. We're all insured. So, and
Yeah. Registered and insured.
registered and insured. So I
Registered
think,
and insured. Yeah, we're
yeah,
good to go. Like, I mean,
we're good.
honestly, there's a lot that people don't realize and that aren't spoken about in these articles because they like to make it, very sort of clickbaity. And I get that and I understand that because they're just doing their job and okay, that's fine. But the reality is, and the unfortunate part, I think, for the whole reason for this topic is just that it really gives people, it shakes them to the core a little bit and makes them not feel safe. And I think there's nothing worse than not feeling safe.
Yeah.
And I think we work really hard to make our patients, clients, whatever you choose to call them, safe. And
Yes,
articles like these can really undo that work. And it's just a shame because as nurses, we're in the industry of wanting to care for people and we genuinely do care,
we do.
and a lot of us nurses don't necessarily just, I mean, everyone wants to go to work to earn money, right? But it's not just for the money. There's a lot of love and a lot of passion and a lot of creativity and expertise that goes into it. So, when you've got
Absolutely.
articles that are kind of, giving you a bit of a hammering about, your intelligence or, the motivation behind why you do what you do, it's upsetting. And then people say, oh, well, you shouldn't take it to heart and whatever. But, we're humans. And of course, you take things to heart. And sometimes, it's a little bit upsetting. So I think when you do see those types of articles, it's just like, could have done without that. But,
Yeah, and that's why we decided to talk about it today, so we could just address it and
yeah.
debunk it a little bit, and and support our industry because
Mm.
it's a great industry, and we're empowering people to feel better about themselves. And I tell
100%.
you, uh, I feel better about myself over the past because I've been getting injectables probably for 14 years now. And, I love that my skin's improving and I'm aging well. I mean, that's empowering.
Mm.
For me, that's empowering.
I mean, everyone wants to look good, whether you admit it or not. You do, and
Absolutely.
we're just an industry that is there and accessible for you to do that if that's what you choose.
Yeah.
So I think it's filled with, as I said before, some of my best friends are cosmetic injectors, and I love them dearly, and they're fabulous
Yeah.
people, and they're so helpful, and doctors, and I think that it, as you sort of said before, Janine, it's just a small amount of rogues that sort of come in and do, a bit of cowboying. But other than that, most of the industry is filled with amazing people that really want to
Absolutely.
help and that aren't
Like you and
interested in,
me.
yes,
Like
like
you
you
and
and me.
me. Yes.
Two fabulous little flowers.
Yes, that's right. And with that, we're gonna end this session. We've talked long enough. Until next
Sure.
time, my darling, be good.
Well, we'll see you. Yep. Stay pretty.